Cali. Trev here. Glad to hear that. Would love to see you there. It's going to be one of our bigger, if not the biggest meetups we've done ever. And it's really cool because, it's in San Diego where Beers and Cameras started. Juan doesn't quite know this, but at one of the meetups, we're going to do like a special announcement thanking him for all that he's done for the community and whatnot, which would be really cool. And I'll send over information as I get it, and talk to you soon. Hope you're having a great day.
Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be a little review of my Leica M262. I'm going to tell you what I love about it, what I don't love about it, and why I chose it in a very real-world circumstance. This isn't going to be as in-depth of an review as I would normally do. It's a little bit more storytelling here because it ended up being a very important camera at a very important moment in my life. It's not sad, though, I promise. It's a very happy story, despite sad circumstances. So that's Act 2. Let's start with Act 1, where I was actually recently going to San Diego to see some very wonderful film friends. Beers and Cameras and The Dark Room were hosting a photo meetup down in San Diego. Shockingly, despite being in LA for 7 years, I had never been to San Diego. I always go north, I never go south. And so I was really excited to hop on a train because trains are the best, and go see some friends down in San Diego. I did not bring my Leica M262 for that adventure, though, because when in Rome, shoot film. So I actually brought with me for that trip my Voigtlander Bessa R2A, which is my film rangefinder camera. And that brings me to the first point that I love about the M262 is the M mount. Being able to very easily and seamlessly swap lenses between my Leica M262 digital and my film rangefinder. Having these small light lenses to be able to travel back and forth and easily swap complete systems between film and digital is pretty awesome. I shot all of these with my Voigtlander Bessa R2A and mostly with my 24mm Elmarit. I love this lens very, very much. You'll see it a lot in this review. I did take an early train down to San Diego on a Friday. I took a day off work because I really wanted to see the city. I took the train right into Old Downtown, which is awesome. You can just get off the tracks and walk into the most historic district of the city. And whilst it is definitely touristy and a bit kitsch, I thoroughly enjoyed myself. In my journeys, I also went to apparently what is the most haunted house in America, the Whaley home. I am not one for these types of things. Like, I don't really go for a lot of that kind of stuff. But I will say I went through this house and I almost fainted. Oh, see? Weird, right? Weird. I'm just telling you. There's something bigger than us out there. I went through this house and I nearly fainted in one particular room. I can't explain it. I just had like this very strange feeling. I got dizzy. As it turns out, I might have been visited by something happening 4,000 miles away.
We come on the sloop John Reed.
So after that, I caught up with the gang. They were staying at this like amazing hotel called the Lafayette, and we were hanging out there and having drinks and getting our cameras ready. And then we headed out for this photo walk in Balboa Park, which is so beautiful, you guys. I had no idea how big it was. There's like the San Diego Zoo is there, and there's a bunch of museums, and there's restaurants, and it was just so fun to see all these incredible people come out and just like hang and take pictures. I also got to shoot the Pentax 17, which is the half frame camera that came out recently. I didn't think I would really like it, to be honest with you, because I'm not huge on scale focus, and just having an external viewfinder that's not coupled. So I wasn't really thinking I would dig it, but oh my gosh, you guys, these pictures came out so good. And like on a roll of 72 shots because of the half frame, There were almost no duds. Like, it was perfect point and shoot, fantastic fun, and I think I might have to put that one in my collection. By the end of the night, after some revelry at the closing event, at this point, I have to say, I was just trying to burn through the rest of this Pentax 17 roll that I had thrown in. Again, 72 shots to like fire off in a matter of hours is a lot. And I had to return the camera at the end of the night. I think Taylor and I were basically wetting ourselves, but it was such a great time. I gave everyone hugs, went back to my hotel, promptly packed, and then got back on the train in the morning. Unlike Friday, where I was actually having to like work and do calls on the train, I just knew I had Sunday to myself. I was going to take my nice, cozy little like 3-4 hour ride back up to LA and watch movies, do all the things that as a mom, I don't get to do a lot. And it was so delightful. I was riding this high, and 7 minutes before pulling into the Burbank station where my husband and kids were picking me up, I got the phone call.
You may say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. I hope someday you'll join us, and the world will be as one.
8 hours and 10 minutes later, I landed in Tahiti. Thankfully, my dad was still breathing, though he was in a coma. He had had a very massive stroke, and there was pretty intense bleeding happening in his brain. He was far too frail for them to operate and do anything, so they basically told me it was time to say goodbye. I sat with him in the hospital all day that day, but I finally, having not slept on the plane, having not really eaten, I realized I had to go back to the house that I have been graciously hosted at for the past 20 years. I went to their home, I unpacked, I took a shower, I ate something, I got some sleep. My journey with Leica began actually with the Leica M240. The M262 is basically the M240 stripped down with video removed, frameline selector removed. It's kind of like the ME was to my M9, or I should say my ME was to an M9. I have not had an M9, but I loved my ME. And I just realized I'm absolutely in love with the lesser version because it's more simplified. I knew for myself, having had the M240, which just felt too chunky in my hand, and I just didn't click with it. But the M262 is a bit thinner. It's definitely lighter because they've taken out some of those features, and I would never use video in an M camera anyway. They don't do that anymore because they figured that out. I did have the M8 after the M240. I sold the M240, got the M8, and that started my whole love affair with like CCD sensors and a lot of what sort of motivated this channel. That then put me onto the Leica ME. And after a handful of, well, I guess like 2 years of shooting those cameras, which I just adored, I decided, okay, they're old. And listen, I'm not scared of old generally. I love old, but Leica old is old and expensive. And I just thought, you know, these cameras are going to give, these sensors are going to give on me eventually. Let me just sell them and get something slightly more modern. I mean, we're still talking not that modern, but let me get something slightly more modern and just stick with it. The other thing that I learned about the ME, which I really appreciated, was just having the actual sort of one-to-one with the lenses. So like it's a full frame sensor, as is the M262 or M240. So having that direct correlation to your lenses, unlike the M8, which actually had an APS-H sensor in it, I just enjoyed that because, again, when I'm bringing my Voigtlander Bessa R2A and digital, it's nice to just have direct compatibility between the focal lengths of those lenses. It has 24 megapixels. It is from 2015, so it's limited in certain ways, but the menu is super simple. Everything about it is just a very straightforward shooting experience. And the files, the raw files, now this isn't really the camera doing it, but the raw files as interpreted by Lightroom straight out of camera are incredible. The color is beautiful. Like with the M8, I always felt like I had to process. With this one, I actually just look at the files straight out of camera, and if you nail the exposure, the raw files are almost always just perfect. The camera is certainly not without fault, and there are things like the fact that there is a bit of a magenta cast to the sensor, the way it renders, in general, that I sometimes have to correct for. I'm always pulling down my my color balance or my white balance slider on the magentas by like 3 points or so. There's definitely some vignetting. It's an older sensor, so the dynamic range and the ISO range is not going to be extraordinarily high, but that being said, I'm used to like the M8 and the ME, so I'm totally fine with that. I can work with it, and if anything, I like it. I like how kind of not perfect it feels, and it just makes it a bit more character filled, whereas so many of the modern sensors are just so clean and so like you can muddy them up in post. But there's definitely a certain effect here. Like as I was looking at these files from this trip, I was like, oh, well, that's fucked up. Like I'm not gonna be able to correct that weird thing happening on the sensor in the corner. But I'm like cool with that. That's kind of the pleasure of it, in the same way that like getting a light leak on a piece of film is. All of that being said, I packed this camera not knowing if I was going to use it at all. This was obviously a very emotional time. I will say though, it's the weirdest thing. I ended up, not right away, I didn't shoot right away, but I ended up feeling more connected to what was happening by having the camera there. And I think that's because it allowed me to be both present and connected to what was happening, but also removed. Almost like a photojournalist documenting something happening in the world. I felt I was there, but I wasn't overwhelmed by the moment. I could kind of just step back and observe it in a very sort of weird meditative way. And that helped a lot, actually. Since visiting hours were actually from 2 to 6 p.m., I would have my mornings, and I just decided pretty early on that like I wanted to cram in as much of the moments that were meaningful to me, spending 20 years visiting him there, places that I knew he loved. So my first port of call was the Marina Taina. My dad lived on his boat. He sailed in 2001 from New York to Tahiti through the Panama Canal, with many stops along the way, but ended up in Tahiti in 2002. He lived on his boat until he was physically incapable of it in 2020. He was moored out in this beautiful marina at the edge of the marina, very near to this lagoon. And it was just this very special place where I just think of our boat being there. And I would swim in those waters and I would watch the stars from the deck. The other thing is that in the marina, they happen to have a couple of great restaurants and bars, and we spent a lot of time in those places having the best nights. And so, of course, the first thing I did was go get a Hinano beer, which is the local beer in Tahiti that my dad and I would drink a lot. The next day I went to, and I will totally butcher the name of this, but the Rahau, I can't remember, the Araharu'u Mare. Now, the Mares are these very sort of spiritual places of worship from the indigenous people in Tahiti. They're very meaningful. My father was very obsessed with the mare, with the mana, the energy of the land. He felt so drawn and connected to Tahiti. It's why he went there and why he never left. The mare are constructed of essentially these like coral or volcanic rock, and they're just open air platforms, open air buildings, and often surrounded by these trees that were believed to ward off evil spirits. And these served as the places where rituals and ceremonies took place to seek the protection of the gods or guidance or forgiveness. They were real central places of significance to the culture pre-European landing. Speaking of European landing, Point Venus is also one of the most incredible places in Tahiti. It is literally where the transit of Venus was first observed and discovered. And I believe it was Cook who did that. He was a naval officer as well as, I guess, a scientist. I should know more, but my father was really into naval history. He's British. He was very into the Royal Navy. I rolled the flag and did a tot of rum to the Queen every night on the boat. Like, that was our tradition. This point in particular is obviously very historically significant, but also just a stunning, stunning place. And shockingly untouristed. It's mostly locals here. It's a very locally festive place. People come, you have beautiful black sand beaches, there's music. People just hang out here, and it's a great, great area. And I do remember vividly when my father first took me, so I definitely had to revisit this place.
You okay? If you want it. Well, yeah. Whatever. It's fine. Hi, friends.
Hi, friends.
Okay.
This was really wild because it's just off the road. Like, you can just pull over, like you're parking to go get coffee, and it's right there. So if you're traveling around Tahiti and want to see something kind of interesting, just pop over here, and then right across the street is the ocean. And you have these beautiful palms, and it's just a peaceful scene. In the midst of all of this revisiting of like warm and fond memories, I did have to also deal with the realities of his end of life arrangements, which I just never thought I would be in that position. Not that I just never thought of it. Of course I would have to be in that position. I am an only child. He has no one else around him at that point. So it was on me to get everything organized, and thank goodness for his very good friends who helped me through this, because not only was it emotionally exhausting, but I just don't have the proficiency of the French language to be able to navigate funeral arrangements, services, purchasing of burial plots, understanding what's a 10-year license versus a lifetime burial plot, which graveyard to go to. All of this was so overwhelming, and I just kept looking at my friends and being like, just tell me what to do. I will do whatever you tell me to do. And they were immense in supporting and solving all of these very, very honestly taxing things, which were beyond challenging. We were able to get him a beautiful plot just sort of overlooking Papeete and the harbor. It was also the last plot available in Papeete, because it's very, very hard to get a burial plot in Papeete. There's just not enough land, and there are, a lot of people. So I felt very fortunate that we were able to do that. And at this point, I had been printing pictures of him for the service. We had written words for the priest or the, I'm not religious, so I apologize. I don't actually know. It was, I was just kind of like in this frenzy of trying to get everything ready because we didn't know how long my dad would live. And then 5 days later, he was still kicking and everyone was shocked. Like, but that is my dad. My dad was always such a strong son of a bitch. Like he would always be the last man standing every night that we'd go out to dinner or any party we went to. He would always be the last one. On the last night that I saw him, I decided to drive up to this very, very beautiful point at the top of this hill, this mountain. It's like 20 minutes drive up into the hills, quite steep, but with this very sweeping view of Papeete. It was a beautiful night, and there was a totally clear sky, so I knew the sunset would be incredible, and I just wanted to stand up there and watch the sunset. And as I was driving up, I got this call.
Hello? Can you hear me? Ah oui? I just left. They just called?
Calmer sa respiration. Ouais. Donc on a dû augmenter la morphine, le débit de la morphine. Tu vois les médicaments qui sont à côté de lui en seringue.
Qu'est-ce que c'est seringue? Pardon.
Dans l'appareil.
Je vais te montrer.
Oui, d'accord. Ouais.
Tu comprends aggravé?
It's very serious.
Voilà.
Ouais. In short, they called me and said they needed to increase the morphine because he was in pain. He was having a hard time breathing, but they were concerned that the increase in morphine would cause a cardiac arrest. A bunch of us showed up that night just to spend that time with him because based on what the doctors had anticipated, he wasn't going to make it for more than an hour or two. We sat with him for 3, and he was still going. The last thing I did before we left was I sang his favorite song, which was John Lennon's Imagine. And we left the hospital. I gave him a kiss. I said, I'll see you in the morning. Good night. And then we drove home, went to bed, and got a call at 1 a.m. that he had passed. We got our clothes on and drove back to the hospital. And as we were pulling into the garage of the hospital, I kid you not.
Did you put this on? No. Still?
Imagine by John Lennon came on the radio. And I knew he was there. I knew he was with us.
As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall wear the starry crown? Good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sisters, let's go down, come on down. Oh, sisters, let's go down in the river to pray. starry crown, good Lord, show me the way. Oh, sinners, let's go down, don't you wanna come down? Oh, sinners, let's go down in the river to pray. As I went down in the river to pray, studying about that good old way, and who shall
So that is a story of the Leica M262 as far as Tahiti was concerned. I never once felt I had taken the wrong camera. I took that camera with my 35 millimeter Summicron, my 24 millimeter Elmarit, my 50 millimeter Voigtlander 1.2, and my 90 millimeter f4. I can't remember what you call that. But that is also an old Leica lens. And I use the 24 almost exclusively, with the 35 and the 50 occasionally exchanged in, and then the 90 on very, very rare occasions, mostly for some of these tighter landscape shots from the home I was staying at. I absolutely loved having this camera because it kind of forced me to pay attention at a time that I think would have been hard otherwise. It gave me something to focus on. It kept me grounded, but it also felt so tactile and so connected to the moment. So again, it was this weird dance of being removed and connected at the same time. And I am so happy that I did end up taking some photos, because I, again, just feel, I don't know that I will ever do anything with them or even look at them again, but I feel like I have that moment forever. And my kids are young, and when they grow up, that might mean something to them as well. So I'm so happy I took my M262. It did not fail me for 1 second. And yeah, it's a camera I'll hold on to. It's definitely not going anywhere. I know I said that about other cameras in the past, but yeah, this one's sticking around at least until it dies. And then, you know, maybe I'll look at an M10. That was the craziest stuff I've ever done.